हेलो फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम ऑन अकेडमी। दिस मी डॉक्टर सिद्धार्थ अरोरा एंड फ्रेंड्स। तुमने ये बात तो बहुत बार सुनी होगी, बहुतों के मुंह से सुनी होगी कि हमको है ना एडिटोरियल्स पढ़ने चाहिए। यस, सो यूपीएससी सिविल सर्विस एग्जामिनेशन पास करनी है तो हमको एडिटोरियल्स पढ़ना है। न्यूज़पेपर्स पढ़ो, एडिटोरियल्स पढ़ो, उसमें बहुत सारे काम की चीज़ें होती हैं। यू मस्ट हैव हर्ड दिस इन नंबर ऑफ टाइम्स, बट मैंने स्टूडेंट्स को एडिटोरियल्स पढ़ते हुए देखा है इन द फनीएस्ट वे पॉसिबल। तो वो एक एक लाइन पढ़ने लग जाते हैं, राइट, ऑफ ट्राइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट इज नॉट टू बी अंडरस्टूड ऑल्सो। प्लीज ट्राई एंड अंडरस्टैंड कि अगर आप एक एडिटोरियल पढ़ रहे हो तो उस एडिटोरियल का उतना ही वैल्यू है जितना कि तुम्हारे कोर्स के लिए या तुम्हारे सिलेबस से कनेक्शन में है। अगर तुम्हारे कोर्स में या तुम्हारे सिलेबस में उसका रेलेवेंस नहीं है, देयर इज नो पॉइंट ट्राइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड एवरी लाइन दैट इज रिटन इन द एडिटोरियल। लेकिन कौन पता है, ये समझाना इतना आसान नहीं होता। तो एक लाइन होती है विच इज कॉल्ड शो डोंट टेल, इन द सेंस कि बोथ ऑफ यू प्रीचिंग। दिस इज माय अटेम्प्ट टू ट्राई एंड हेल्प यू आउट इन अंडरस्टैंडिंग एडिटोरियल्स। कोशिश करेंगे, और ये कंप्लीटली डिपेंड करता है कि मुझे इन वीडियोस का क्या रिस्पॉन्स आता है। मेनी अ टाइम्स आप में से बहुत सारे लोग बोलते हैं कि सर यू स्टार्टेड समथिंग और आप उसी को कंटिन्यू करो, और थोड़े टाइम के बाद मैं उसको डिसकंटिन्यू कर देता हूँ ऑन यूट्यूब। द रीजन टू दिस इज आई एम अ वेरी सीरियस एजुकेटर। जो हमारे प्लस स्टूडेंट्स होते हैं उनको मालूम है कि मैं किस डेप्थ तक पढ़ाता हूँ एंड व्हाट इज द लेवल ऑफ एक्सपर्टीज दैट आई हैव ऑन दिस सब्जेक्ट। लेकिन अगर मुझे रिस्पॉन्स नहीं आता ऑन यूट्यूब, तो आई डोंट थिंक आई बी आई एम गोना वेस्ट माई टाइम मेकिंग अ सीरियस वीडियो ऑन दिस। टाइम पास करना मुझे आता नहीं है। तो द पॉइंट हियर इज कि अगर आपको ये सही में अच्छा लगा, प्लीज ड्रॉप इन अ कमेंट। The more response that I get, the more encouraged I'll feel. I'll make these editorials. फिर आपको कहीं और से एडिटोरियल्स पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी, और तुमने इस तरह से एडिटोरियल्स कभी नहीं पढ़ा होगा। आई प्रॉमिस यू ऑन दैट। तो लेट्स सी व्हाट इज द रिस्पॉन्स टू दिस। इसी उम्मीद से कि तुम इस ईमानदार कोशिश को सपोर्ट करोगे और अपना भी फायदा कराओगे। दिस इज अ कलेक्टिव यूपीएससी एस्पिरेंट्स के लिए, खुद के लिए एक कॉल कि पढ़ना होता है ऐसे। दिस इज 24 कैरेट। लेट्स स्टडी दिस पार्ट। सो आई एम डॉक्टर सिद्धार्थ अरोरा। एज यू नोटिस कि मैं अन अकेडमी पे पॉलिटी, गवर्नेंस, इंटरनेशनल रिलेशन इन टर्म्स ऑफ जीएस और पीएसआई ऑप्शनल लेता हूँ इन टर्म्स ऑफ ऑप्शनल। तो मुझे अन मतलब मैं बता नहीं सकता, आई डोंट हैव वर्ड्स फॉर दैट। ओके, द काइंड ऑफ सपोर्ट दैट आई हैव from Unacademy students. 300 million plus watch minutes, that is 30 crore plus watch minutes on Unacademy, with more than 266,000 followers on me, and with 11,000 and plus dedications. These dedications are the beautiful words and the feelings that have been expressed by UPSC aspirants who've seen our Unacademy students. I would continue to work hard for every one of my student, whoever wants to learn, whoever is an imandar, whoever is an honest, diligent student, I'm going to stand by him. So let's take care of this part. सबसे पहले कुछ major announcements. So we are preparing. If you are preparing for UPSC IAS IPS examination, please use special code SET Live to get this amazing opportunity, because हम लोग ने आपके लिए एक बहुत ही solid कोर्स स्ट्रक्चर को बनाया हुआ है। प्रीलिम्स जीएस कोर्स, प्रीलिम्स क्रैश कोर्स, टीसैट कोर्स, मेंस कोर्स, क्यूपी प्री टेस्ट सीरीज एंड मेंस टेस्ट सीरीज। अन अकेडमी केवल एक ऐसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है जहाँ पे ये सारे के सारे इंक्लूडेड होते हैं। देयर आर नो हिडन चार्जेस। उसके बावजूद वी आर सो रीजनेबल। तो अगर आप बाकी जगह पे जाओगे, दे आर नॉट the ones who are going to give you anything at that reasonable price. And even if they're giving you reasonable, please read in between the lines. There are hidden fees, there are hidden structures. When you once enter that dungeon, then they will tell you कि ये fee structures है। ऐसा नहीं है at an academy. Also a very important part कि रिपब्लिक डे के उपलक्ष्य में अन अकेडमी ने आपके लिए एक ऑफर लाया था। इस ऑफर को हमने एक्सटेंड कर दिया है। फाउंडेशन बैच IAS IPS 2025, मिशन IAS बैच IAS IPS 2026-27 and English batch IAS IPS 2025 50% ऑफ है, प्लस 6 months एक्सटेंशन। ये 31 जनवरी तक एक्सटेंड कर दिया गया है। डोंट वेस्ट दिस अपॉर्चुनिटी। यूज माय कोड SIDLIVE। इस कोड का यूटिलाइजेशन करो, बी अ पार्ट ऑफ टीम सेट लाइव एज वेल एज टेक द अपॉर्चुनिटी right now. The Mission IS batch for CSE 2026, India's best educators, 1 class per day to ensure self-study. Notes, live test, quizzes, foundation batch and this part. Please remember, ये 29 January से batch launch हो रहा है. Don't let go of this part. We have also online classroom program for CSE 2025. One stop for English for those amongst you who want to study in English language. We have India's top educators, 1 class per 1 day, instant doubt resolution by educators, and so on. So this is starting from February 13, 2024. Make sure that you don't miss this bus too. Widest choice of optional with single subscription is also available. Name it, all of them is available. Great. Come to today's video. तुमने ये वीडियो में जो आज हम लोग पढ़ रहे हैं, you will study an editorial. तो हम लोगों ने एक एडिटोरियल बड़े ध्यान से पढ़ लेना, राइट. बाकी टाइम तो you will see such funny videos on YouTube. Might as well spend the next 20-30 minutes studying something serious. Justice without power. Yes, this is the chapter, or this is what we saw coming in the newspaper. तुमने सबने ये पढ़ा होगा, बिल्कुल सही बात है. लेकिन what do you make out of it? So first of all word is justice without power. बड़े आराम से बैठो, सोचो और जैसा मैं बोलता जा रहा हूँ उसको लिखते चले जाना. So what is the background of this story? Background of this story is that ever since the Israel-Gaza conflict has started, Israel has been pounding Gaza with tons and tons of ammunition, tons and tons of bombs. There have been many civilian casualties also. There have been many collateral damages also. Israel justifies it that since it is a war and Hamas is actually utilizing the civilian population to hide itself, and it actually is hiding or stashing tons and tons of ammunition and bombs, etc., in hospital buildings, schools, etc. There is no other choice but to bombard the entire Gaza. Gaza, on the other hand, is losing tons and tons of population also, obviously. So there are men, women, children killed on this part. South Africa decided to do something about it. So South Africa goes to United Nations. United Nations has a judicial organ. Write the word. Pehla word likho. United Nations has a judicial organ which is called as the International Court of Justice. International Court of Justice is responsible for adjudication. There are two types of matters. However, it is in this case responsible for adjudication. In other words, if there is a legal dispute between A versus B, then it is the work of International Court of Justice that they decide who's right and who's wrong. In that sense, International Court of Justice can be understood as the primary judicial organ of the United Nations of organization. South Africa has approached International Court of Justice. South Africa has accused Israel that Israel is practically committing genocide. Genocide is कि पूरा का पूरा गाजा को destroy करे हो क्या? It is not allowed, and that is why there should be action, there should be a decree, there should be an order against Israel for this crime. Fair enough. This is the background. When I read the entire editorial, I saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 columns followed by a gist. Each of these columns may have anywhere between 7 to 3 paragraphs. So if I read all these paragraphs, it will be next morning before I understand that I've finished off this editorial. If you are able to do this in one day, then you need 35 hours a day only to read editorials, which I believe you don't have. So what have I done for you? First of all, I have highlighted all the important parts. तो मैंने इस editorial में सारे important parts को highlight कर दिए. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs here, 6 here, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So the rest of it is this last part actually, right? You can take it as a conclusion. You can read it at a later stage. लेकिन that's not the end of it, right? तो ये तो हो गया paragraph. ये तो कोई बड़ी बात नहीं हुई. Now what will I do? I will explain each of these highlighted paragraphs. And once I explain all of these highlighted paragraphs, you will notice that there will be nothing left for you to study beyond that. If you want to do anything beyond that, you're practically wasting your time. You're doing research and development and you are doing PhD, which all serious educators have repeated ad nauseum that it is a waste of time. You should not do it. So let us study ईच ऑफ दिस पार्ट। तो पहला लाइन इज द इंटरनेशनल कोड ऑफ जस्टिस को इंट्रोडक्शन करने के लिए। सो तुम्हें पहले सबसे पहले समझना चाहिए, थोड़ा अंडरस्टैंड द बैकग्राउंड बिहाइंड दिस। सो इंटरनेशनल कोड ऑफ जस्टिस का सिचुएशन क्या था? लेट मी एक्सप्लेन दिस टू यू इन अ बेटर वे। So if I look at International Court of Justice, International Court of Justice is a primary judicial organ of the United Nations organization. लेकिन इससे पहले भी ऐसा कुछ अटेम्प्ट हुआ था, समथिंग ऑन दोस लाइंस हुआ था। तो 1899 and 1907, 1899 लिखते चले जाओ। Okay, as I told you, you have enough opportunities to waste your time on YouTube. Might as well take a look at a few serious videos also. Time pass videos तो बहुत सारे मिल ही जाते हैं तुमको। 1899 and 1907, there were two main conferences which are called as International Hague Conferences. So these were international conferences of peace at the Hague, नीदरलैंड्स में। ये 1899 और 1907 में हुआ। 1899 में समथिंग ऑन दोस लाइंस, एक समथिंग ऑन अ कोर्ट लाइंस, कोर्ट था नहीं वो, which was an arbitration tribunal called as परमानेंट कोर्ट ऑफ आर्बिट्रेशन बनाया गया। The permanent court of arbitration came into the place because of the deliberations of this international Hague conferences. Permanent Court of Arbitration (PCA), Permanent Court of Arbitration, came into force in 1902. Now ये arbitration है, कीवर्ड इज ये कोर्ट है, इनके arbitration का कोर्ट है। Arbitration, for those amongst you who do not know this, arbitration means a method of settlement. दिस इज अ मेथड ऑफ सेटलमेंट, राइट। यहाँ पर एडजुडिकेशन नहीं हो रहा है। क्या नहीं हो रहा है? एडजुडिकेशन नहीं हो रहा है। एडजुडिकेशन का मतलब होता है that you decide one is right and the other one is wrong. This is not adjudication. Permanent Court of Arbitration is a tribunal. It's a permanent tribunal for arbitration in which we try and settle disputes between the two of us. So if there is a dispute between A and B, instead of going to the courts, instead of looking at adjudication, they would try and settle matters by arbitration. Very similar to what is called as out of court settlement. We'll go into this into further details when we do judiciary, but that is an alternate dispute resolution. So if you might have just heard of these facts: arbitration, mediation, conciliation, all of these terms are alternate dispute resolution. The permanent court of arbitration coincidentally is in the same city, same building, or the same seat rather, wherein we also establish what is called as an international court of justice. International court of justice, as opposed to permanent court of arbitration, is actually a court. They do adjudication. So please don't mix up the two of them. International court of justice is a court in the truest sense possible, wherein there will be an order against one, relief to one, and the other one, the order will function in favor of one, it will go against the other. Permanent court of arbitration will usually come down somewhere in the middle. The contentious issues will be settled by settlement. So first of all, don't mix up the two. Also remember, permanent court of arbitration is not a part of United Nations organization. It is not a part of. This can be a very good question. Permanent Court of Arbitration is not a part of United Nations organization, but International Court of Justice, as the article suggests, is United Nations top court. So I guess मैंने तुम्हारा एक क्वेश्चन तो यहाँ से कर लिया, that International Court of Justice came into place. So it came into place 1946, just soon after the United Nations Charter of 1945. So it is a part of United Nations. It is a court of adjudication, and you might be seeing that there are many judges sitting. These are 15 judges who are sitting, right? So stop counting, just take it on face value. And why are we studying? Because United Nations recently has approached International Court of Justice, accusing United Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. What happens, what has not happened, वो तुम लोगों को more or less पता ही है, because इतना सब टाइम पास शोर शुरू हो जाता है सोशल मीडिया पे, completely forgetting कि हमें सिर्फ इतना पता होने से कुछ नहीं होता कि सोशल मीडिया में जो बताया जाता है वो प्रैक्टिकली द फ्लफ पढ़ाया जाता है, फ्रॉथ पढ़ाया जाता है, द सब्सटेंस इज राइट हियर। तो अब मैं तुम्हें क्या कर रहा हूँ, जो मेरा प्रॉमिस है, ओके, सो लेट्स गो बाय वन पैराग्राफ बाय अनदर पैराग्राफ एंड ट्राई एंड अंडरस्टैंड। तो मैंने उन्हीं पैराग्राफ्स को मैंने स्प्लिट कर दिया है इनटू स्मॉल अंडरस्टैंडिंग पार्ट। सो दीज आर, मैंने डेट बाय डेट तुम्हारे लिए एडिटोरियल्स निकाले। लेट्स सी व्हाट इज द रिस्पॉन्स ऑफ वन ऑफ दीज वीडियोस, उसके अनुसार मैं देखता हूँ कि आगे हम लोग करते हैं कि नहीं। तो इंटरनेशनल कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिस इज यूनाइटेड नेशंस हाईएस्ट जुडिशियल बॉडी, और ये न्यूज में है बिकॉज ऑफ द केस इंस्टीट्यूटेड बाय साउथ अफ्रीका। मुझे सिर्फ इतना ही मतलब मालूम होना चाहिए कि मुझे उससे ज़्यादा टेंशन होने की ज़रूरत नहीं। ये कहाँ प्लेस्ड है? ये पीस पैलेस पे प्लेस है इन द हेग, द नीदरलैंड्स, और ये जून 1945 में इस्टेब्लिश हुआ था चार्टर ऑफ यूनाइटेड नेशंस में। और ये इसलिए हुआ था बिकॉज परमानेंट कोर्ट ऑफ इंटरनेशनल जस्टिस जो इसका प्रीडेसेसर था, ओके, वाज नॉट एबल टू डू इट्स जॉब वेरी वेल। तो परमानेंट कोर्ट ऑफ इंटरनेशनल जस्टिस हमने काम नहीं किया। हमेशा ऐसे ही होता है, कोई नई ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इसलिए बनाई जाती है बिकॉज द प्रीवियस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इज नॉट एबल टू डू इट्स जॉब। नाउ लेट्स गो बैक टू दिस पार्ट। तो ये हो गया हमारा पैराग्राफ, ओके। मैं उम्मीद है कि तुम लोग को कुछ मदद कर पा रहा हूँ। तो दिस इज द फर्स्ट पैराग्राफ, इसमें हम लोग को फैक्ट्स पता चल गए। अब मैंने ये बाकी सारे पार्ट्स यहाँ पे से छोड़ दिए, ओके। तो ऑब्वियसली साउथ अफ्रीका इज alleging that Israel is committing genocide, Israel is bound to have opposed that. तो obviously तभी तो it is a legal dispute between A and B, which is all written over here. तो ये बात हमारे इस टाइम पर कोई बहुत ज़्यादा ज्ञानवर्धक नहीं मानी जाएगी। लेट्स गो टू द नेक्स्ट पार्ट। मैंने दूसरा पार्ट बता दिया। सीटेड कहाँ पर है, तो तुमसे पूछा जाएगा वेयर इज इट एस्टैब्लिश, तो बोल देना हेग में है। यूनाइटेड नेशन चार्टर के तुरंत बाद बनाया गया था, और परमानेंट कोर्ट ऑफ इंटरनेशनल जस्टिस इतना काम नहीं कर रहा था, इसलिए बनाया गया था। चलो जी, नेक्स्ट पार्ट। लेट्स लुक एट द नेक्स्ट पार्ट। अब नाउ इंटरनेशनल कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिस जो है, तो इंटरनेशनल कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिस इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर डीलिंग विद टू टाइप्स ऑफ केसेस। कौन से दो टाइप्स ऑफ केसेस है? पहला टाइप ऑफ केस को बोला जाता है कंटेंशियस केसेस। तो दे आर कॉल्ड एज कंटेंशियस केसेस। कंटेंशियस जिसमें ऑब्वियसली देयर इज अ डिस्प्यूट, ए एक बोल रहा है, बी दूसरा बोल रहा है, दिस इज कॉल्ड एज कंटेंशियस इश्यूज। मोस्ट ऑफ दीज केसेस ऐसे ही है। तो एक एक ए ने बी को बोला कि तुम कर रहे हो क्राइम अगेंस्ट ह्यूमैनिटी, बी बोला ना मैं तो कुछ नहीं कर रहा हूँ ऐसा, देन इट इज कॉल्ड एज अ कंटेंशियस इशू। दूसरा इशू वुड बी कॉल्ड एज, और दूसरे टाइप ऑफ केसेस इज कॉल्ड एज एडवाइजरी जुरिस्डिक्शन। तो दो तरह के केसेस हो जाते हैं। एक है कंटेंशियस इश्यूज जिसमें यूजुअली एक पार्टी अलेज करेगी, दूसरी पार्टी डिफेंड करेगी, या फिर वाइस वर्सा, राइट। तो वो बोलेगा जी तुमने ना इंटरनेशनल लॉ को नहीं फॉलो किया, दूसरा बोलेगा ना ना मैंने तो किया था। सच अ मैटर विल बी कॉल्ड एज द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ कंटेंशियस इशू। कभी कभी एडवाइजरी जुरिस्डिक्शन की भी जरूरत पड़ती है, जैसे जैसे यूनाइटेड नेशंस खुद ही पूछ ले, यूएनओ अपने ही जुडिशियल ऑर्गेन यानी कि इंटरनेशनल कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिस को बोलो, इंटरनेशनल कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिस हम ना फला फला रेजोल्यूशन करने वाले हैं, या WHO XYZ काम करने वाला है, या यूनिसेफ ऐसा कुछ करने वाला है, या नेम है यूनेस्को ने ये फैसला किया है, या वट एवर कि या जी हम तो कोई पीस कीपिंग मिशन कर रहे हैं, इज इट लीगली ओके और इज इट नॉट, ये इज इट पूछा गया, ओपिनियन लिया गया, उनकी राय ली गई है। तो दो तरह के इश्यूज आते हैं, कभी कभी ये भी क्वेश्चन आ सकता है, यू जस्ट डोंट नो। So there are two types of issues. So this is a multilateral forum. अब multilateral क्यों बोला गया इसको? This is also very important because अलग अलग regions of this world से judges इसका part बनते हैं, right? So we'll get into this slightly later. It has dual jurisdictional power. एक है advisory jurisdiction, मैंने तुम्हें अभी अभी बताया, this is an advisory jurisdiction. दूसरा is jurisdiction in contentious cases. पहले वाले में लीगल ओपिनियन बता देते हैं, ओके। तो यूनाइटेड नेशंस खुद ही पूछ सकता है, या फिर यूनाइटेड नेशंस के ऑर्गन्स पूछ सकते हैं, स्पेशलाइज्ड एजेंसीज पूछ सकती है कि भाई बता दो, नो आई एम डूइंग राइट और रॉन्ग। ऑन द अदर हैंड, एज अपोज टू दैट, इफ यू नोटिस द कंटेंशियस इश्यूज, ऑब्वियसली देयर विल बी अ लीगल डिस्प्यूट, वन कंट्री इज गोइंग टू allege against the other one whether there has been a state responsibility for some crimes in violation of international law or norms or not. तो इट इज़ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि हर चीज में इंटरनेशनल कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिस का ओपिनियन यूनाइटेड नेशंस ले सकता है, वेदर कंटेंशियस और एडवाइजरी। तो अगर यहाँ पे देखेंगे तो हैज इट बीन सक्सेसफुल? यस, इट हैज बीन सक्सेसफुल। कभी कभी मेंस में ऐसे आंसर लिखने आएगा। तो लीगैलिटी ऑफ द थ्रेट और यूज ऑफ न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स इन 96, या लीगल कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा, दिस इज फॉर मेंस। प्रीलिम्स में इसका कोई वैल्यू है नहीं। इनफैक्ट मुझे नहीं लगता मेंस में भी इतना इंपॉर्टेंट है, कि ऑप्शनल में आएगा, PSI में आएगा, तो तुम ये लोग लिख सकते हो। Either ways, let's get down to business. फिर से let's go back. तो मैंने ये वाला पैराग्राफ बता दिया तुमको, yes, this is done. ये भी मैंने बता दिया। अब इसका स्ट्रक्चर होगा, ओके। सो लेट्स लुक एट द स्ट्रक्चर। तो ये मैंने यहाँ पर सबको बता दिया है दैट इट इज अ मल्टीलैटरल फोरम। तो मल्टीलैटरल फोरम में मुझे ये पता है कि फ्रॉम वेरियस पार्ट्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड, राइट, वेरियस कॉन्टिनेंट्स में प्रैक्टिकली देर आर 15 जजेस जिनको अपॉइंट किया जाता है, राइट। ये अपॉइंट कैसे करते हैं ना, दिस इज अनदर क्वेश्चन दैट कैन बी आस्क्ड। ये अपॉइंट कैसे करते हैं? देयर वुड बी सिमल्टेनियस एंड सेपरेट इलेक्शंस एट द यूनाइटेड नेशन जनरल असेंबली एंड यूनाइटेड नेशन सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल। प्लीज रिमेंबर, कभी कभी टेम्परेरी जजेस भी होता है व्हेन द कोरम इज नॉट देयर। इन अदर वर्ड्स, टेम्परेरी अपॉइंटमेंट होता है, उन जजेस को बोला जाता है एड हॉक जजेस। ओके, हर जज को 9 years टर्म होता है। ओके, क्या इंडिया की तरफ से भी कोई है? यस, जस्टिस दलवीर भंडारी would be considered as India's the representative at International Court of Justice। तो ये हमारे पास क्वेश्चन आ गया, कितने जजेस हो गए? 15 जजेस हो गए। टर्म क्या हो गया? 9 years हो गया। इलेक्शंस कहाँ हुआ? यूनाइटेड नेशन जनरल असेंबली में हुआ और यूनाइटेड नेशन सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल में हुआ। एड हॉक जजेस हो सकते हैं, बिल्कुल सही बात है। नाउ एक और इंपॉर्टेंट प्रॉब्लम है। प्रॉब्लम क्या है? इंटरनेशनल कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिस एक क्लियर बात बोलता है। क्या बोलता है? बोलता है एवरी डिसीजन ऑफ आवर्स इज फाइनल। what does it say? It says every decision of ours shall be final, every decision of ours shall be legally binding on the parties concerned, and every decision of ours is नॉट सब्जेक्ट टू अपील। तो मैंने क्या बोला? इट इज फाइनल, इट इज लीगली बाइंडिंग ऑन द पार्टीज कंसर्न एंड इट इज नॉट ओपन टू अपील। ये हम लोगों ने क्लियरली बता दिया। तो इस हिसाब से तो तुम्हें ऐसा लगेगा कि इंटरनेशनल कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिस ने जो कुछ भी आज तक बोला है वो हमेशा माना जाएगा। लेकिन गालिब साहब ने बोला था, हमें मालूम है जन्नत की हकीकत, लेकिन दिल के खुश रहने को गालिब ख्याल अच्छा है। The reason over here is that many a times we have seen that nobody obeys this. The International Court of Justice के orders have come, but the parties concerned have taken a position that we are not going to obey it. Very recently, if you remember, very recently, there were cases related to China. There were cases related to Romania. There were cases related to, in fact, historically speaking, the very famous case of United States also, right? So once I'm just taking slightly examples on this, कृपा करके इस पे जाके रिसर्च करने मत बैठ जाना। So there have been many cases like Croatia versus Serbia, like Bosnia and Herzegovina, all that part। सर्बिया के मैटर्स में क्या हुआ? कुछ नहीं हुआ। द पॉइंट वाज, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, जो कोर्ट्स में एक्चुअली फाइनल ऑर्डर आते आते बहुत टाइम लगता है। इट इज अ वेरी स्लो एंड ब्यूरोक्रेटिक हेवी कोर्ट। तो यू विल सी दैट रूलिंग्स आते आते ईयर्स लग जाते हैं। देखो, whenever you look at the word justice, you have to remember one very oft repeated line, and it says justice delayed is justice denied. If it is true with regards to laws and courts within the country, it is equally true if you're dealing with international law. It is exactly the same. So, if at all, for example, although what has recently happened is in the South Africa versus Israel case, which is recently in news, although the versus Israel case, although no actual decree has been passed against Israel, the court has not come to the conclusion that Israel is committing suicide or sorry, genocide. Sorry. However, if what is it saying is that it is actually saying, please stop the war. Is Israel going to listen to that? Is Israel going to listen to that? In fact, if we're going by the statement of Benjamin Netanyahu, he says very clearly, he said that this order or this decree is atrocious. It is absurd. Why must we listen to it? There have been many such cases in the past also. Romania case, Croatia case. In fact, the case of Cambodia versus United States of America, when USA was blamed, or rather alleged to have been supporting what are called as Contras. Did USA actually bow down in obedience to the International Court of Justice? Certainly not. We've seen very few examples, if we notice, that states have approached, okay, they have been successful in furthering the participation of states that have not accepted its compulsory jurisdiction. Romania has recently advanced a declaration in support of the court's jurisdiction, which 30 states have joined. The point यहाँ पर ये है, the point यहाँ पर है, जो यूनाइटेड नेशंस ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस है और उसके सारे ऑर्गन्स है, they are so dependent on the member states itself. और यहां पर तुम्हें एक की वर्ड आ जाता है, इंटरनेशनल कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिस डिक्री तो पास कर सकता है, ऑर्डर तो पास कर सकता है, बट इट डज नॉट हैव व्हाट इज कॉल्ड एज एनफोर्समेंट पावर. दिस इज द वेरी मेजर इशू विद दिस कोर्ट. तो तुम्हें ये बात समझना बड़ा जरूरी होगा. इफ यू रिमेंबर पॉलिटी से, you read Avidice, rule of law. Avidice rule of law says there are three main elements. One, there should be supremacy of law. Second, there should be equality before law. Third, there should be predominance of legal spirit. I hope you recall this from Article 14's discussion. Now, when we are doing with predominance of legal spirit, what are we actually implying? What does it transpire into? What does it translate into? Well, the main thrust of the word, the predominance of legal spirit, is that the court is not going to be a moot spectator if you are not going to obey the order or the decree, or you're not going to comply by the orders of the court. The entire might of the state will is standing behind the Supreme Courts or the High Courts, or for that matter, even the subordinate courts order. If you read Article 141 of the Constitution, it says that the decision taken by the Supreme Court shall be the law of the land. But if you read it along with Article 142 and 144, it says that all civil and judicial authorities are going to come in aid to make sure that the Supreme Court's order is compliant with. Who's going to come behind the order of International Court of Justice? We are not having any clear example on this. That is the main problem of International Court of Justice. So this is how you study. So first you study the facts, then you study the current affairs, then you study the structure, then you study what are they going to do, these are functions, etc. And finally at the end of this, using the same editorial, मैंने तुमको ये बात भी समझा दी कि what is the problem with International Court of Justice. It has not been successfully able to do what it wants the parties to do. It has got no enforcement power. There is no might of the United Nations or United Nations Security Council behind it to make sure that these orders are complied with. This is a major problem. Another important issue. Another important issue is that you have to first distinguish in your mind that if a judge comes from India and sits on one of the bench or sits on the bench of International Court of Justice, is his opinion supposed to be exactly same or in tandem with the decision or the policy of that country? Let me explain this to you. So for example, if Justice Dalveer Bhandari represents India, is he actually representing India, or is he an impartial judge? That makes a very important question to think about. So in terms of the Russia Ukraine war, when the matter was pending before the International Court of Justice, right, and being argued, Justice Dalveer Bhandari's vote was in favor of provisional measures against Russia. Now, what most people have made a mistake about, and what most people have read it against, is that Justice Dalveer Bhandari has said कि मेरा vote is against Russia. But is that India's position against Russia? No, because as much as we understand, India has always abstained from voting on all key resolutions pertaining to Ukraine-Russia conflict. So now you have to again distinguish between two. When I say Justice Dalveer Bhandari is from India, is that supposed to mean, or is that supposed to be translated into that Justice Dalveer Bhandari's opinion is that of the official position of India? I don't think so. But it is an open to interpretation kind of thought process, because everybody would see, since Justice Dalveer Bhandari comes from India, his opinion should have kind of an influence, or either his opinion influences India's foreign policy or rather India's foreign policy influences his, which is not the case and should not be the case. Since please don't forget, it is a court, uh, and the court is supposed to be uninterested and unbiased. This is a very important element that you have to pay attention, and अगर तुमने इस सब लोगों को देख लिया तो तुम्हारा पूरा का पूरा articles पूरा का पूरा complete हो जाएगा. So herein I have explained Justice Dalveer Bhandari's vote. I've spoken about no enforcement power. I've spoken about that various of these. For example, let's see a very practical example in today's matter also. This is also important. And just, I mean, just for the sake of argument, just let's assume that International Court of Justice decides to hold Israel guilty of genocide. Do you think we'll be able to enforce it? I don't think so. Because United States is standing right behind its most important ally, that is Israel. They are going to exercise their veto powers and the game shall be over. So is International Court of Justice actually being able to do what they want to do? I don't think so. They have their own problems, structural problems, that is slow and bureaucratic structures. Is it relevant? In some matters, yes, we've shown some cases like Romania, etc. But let's accept it and let's agree to this point that there are many reforms required. And if there are many reforms, you can see it from the last part of this paragraph. You can just have a look at this. Please end every time end your answer on a hopeful note. Yes, there are reforms required, but yet those reforms have yet not done. We'll look into it when the time comes to it. So this is how you finish off a pura ka pura article and finish it off. बिकॉज आज ये पहला ऐसा एक्सपेरिमेंट है ओके मैंने सोचा मैं तुम्हें एक और ऐसा एक्सपेरिमेंट में ले जाऊं और एक और ऐसा आर्टिकल दिखाऊं विच इज जैसे बोलते हैं ना सुर्खियां बटोर रहा है यस द वन विच इज द स्टॉर्म इन द टी कप राइट क्वेश्चन रिलेटेड टू Maldives, India and China. So this is an article or this is an editorial or article by Arup Chatterjee and we'll look into this part. अब Maldives जिंदगी में कभी इतना अपनी अपनी एग्जिस्टेंस में एक्सेप्ट एक बार जब उनका कू अटेम्प्ट हुआ था वहां पे उससे पहले और उसके बाद अगर मालदीव्स कभी न्यूज में आया तो वो अभी अभी आया ओके सो फॉर द सिलियस्ट ऑफ रीजंस राइट वी हैव सीन दिस फॉर द ऑल द रॉन्ग रीजंस मालदीव्स नजर में आया आमतौर पे वी यूज्ड टू सी मालदीव्स ओनली व्हेन बॉलीवुड स्टार्स यूज्ड टू ट्रैवल फिर वो इंस्टाग्राम पे फोटोग्राफ डालते थे आई डोंट नो व्हाट वेंट रॉन्ग विद यूपीएससी एस्पिरेंट्स व्हेन दिस मालदीव्स इशू हैपेंड they just went पूरा दे ensured कि एक एक चीज के बारे में डिस्कशन हो रही है आई डोंट नो व्हाई is this so much to Maldives or what are we missing because I don't think that it you have to deal with this in such length and breadth कि ऐसा लगे कि तुम practically PhD कर रहे हो on Maldives I thought I'll be able to help you on this part and I'll also tell you कि actually Maldives और इंडिया और चाइना के इस वाले इशू से तुम्हें पढ़ना क्या है तुम्हें पढ़ना एक्चुअली क्या है आई टेल यू दैट ऑल्सो सो माई पॉइंट इज टू बी एबल टू हेल्प यू आउट इन सम वे और द अदर लेट्स सी इफ यू आर एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड सो मैंने फिर से ये आर्टिकल किया है नाउ इस आर्टिकल में भी मैंने रेलेवेंट पॉइंट्स को डिवाइड किया है और अगर तुम्हें लग रहा है कि क्वाइट अ बिट ऑफ इट इज यू नो कलर्ड इट्स नॉट कलर्ड इन द सेंस ये सिर्फ उसमें से कुछ कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट्स है ओके उसको मैं अभी तुम्हारे साथ शेयर कर दूंगा तो जो फर्स्ट पार्ट है ओके उसमें मॉलडीव्स का स्ट्रक्चर बताया गया है ऑलराइट सो इट इज इन द इंडियन ओशन इट इज आवर नेबर एज अ पार्ट ऑफ इंडियन ओशन ओके इसमें पारस वायलेंस है आई डोंट केयर वी नॉट गोइंग टू काउंट ऑफ दिस और इम्पोर्टेंट यहाँ पर है कि इनका एक्चुअली ये कॉलोनाइज नहीं हुए थे राइट और डिस्पाइट द फैक्ट दैट दे हैड अट्रैक्टेड द अटेंशन ऑफ सेवरल ऑफ दीज इंपीरियल पावर्स however later it came under the British economic and strategic influence, and it was somehow okay a kind of suzerainty kind of thing. So it was never a complete colonization, but England certainly had a huge influence on this part. जैसे ही अगर हम Maldives के बारे में बात करेंगे तो it is a constitutionally Muslim nation today, right? Although Maldivian culture has big elements of Buddhism, so this is another important element that you have to study. अगर तुम्हें ये समझ में आ रहा है, okay, without going much into it, just understand that yes, this is one of the angles that we might have to consider behind what has happened today. As soon as Maldives became independent, Maldives decided to have good relationships with India, with Pakistan, as also with Sri Lanka, right? India has certainly contributed to Maldives, and not only in terms of military support or when there was a coup attempt, but also with terms of the development. So a few names have been given. The Indian International Airport Authority was awarded a tender, and so on and so forth. So you want to study the exact, that's fine. Otherwise, even if you say that we are supporting them in development, that's more than enough for us to study. So let's get into this part. So if you read this part, this is the first part, which is a geographical structure. Since it is in the Indian Ocean region, and since India and China are vying for influence in the Indian Ocean region, I guess Maldives does appear to have a very important strategic importance for us. So let's go to this part. Again, an important part that it is a constitutional Muslim nation today. Maldivian culture, though rooted in Buddhism, but Islam is the one which they accepted as a part of the constitution. It has a strategic location, right? And that is why even before this present controversy, in fact, for the longest time, the sailors from Portugal, England, France, etc., they were vying for their influence in Maldives. Gradually, the Victorian administration became powerful. They became the de facto handler of Maldivian foreign affairs, right? And so on and so forth. Independence came in 1965 for Maldives, and then it started making friends, or it started having friendly cooperation with all its neighbors, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and so on and so forth. With relationship to India, we have a agreement with place which is called as the Treaty of Friendship, which we had signed in 1981, right? And that's about what you should be knowing. In other words, everything was hunky-dory. There were all good things happening. And if it is good thing, we don't have to worry much about it. So yes, this was British Protectorate, 1965. See, I have made all these points for you. इसी points में से निकाल के मैंने तुम्हारे लिए कीवर्ड्स को निकाल लिया. So Victorian administration है, de facto elder है, okay. Maldives was the British naval base, continued to be a British protectorate until 1965. India has been helping. So the point here is the मामून अब्दुल गयूम के खिलाफ जब वो अटेम्प्ट हुआ था, उस टाइम पर इंडिया ने उसकी हेल्प की थी. We also have a few, and it is not that big, okay. The issue that there has been made, there have not many Indian troops over there, or very few Indian troops are there stationed in Maldives. So let's not get into this part. Now comes the element of country. The crux of this entire discussion has to be around China. So don't don't study into or go into the research. Don't start counting the number of islands that Maldives have. Okay, don't start counting how many radars there are there. Okay, and if you're still interested, knock yourself out. I don't care, but don't waste your time, right? At least in the interest of you passing this exam. But the point here is, okay, why China? Because let's not forget about this fact that China has been, for the longest time, also been in very good books with Maldives. We are not understanding this, right? That this is not a recent phenomenon. China has been expanding its feet, expanding its presence. It has been spreading its influence in the Indian Ocean region. It is a part of its larger strategic program, which has now got a name also, which is called One Belt, One Road. It has also got one part which is called as a string of pearls. So what is string of pearls? First understand what is string of pearls. String of pearls is an official, it is an unofficial rather, it's not an official one, but it is an unofficial strategic influence of China. What does China believe, or what does China want to do? China wants to make sure that Indian Ocean remains within the influence of its navy, influence of its control. There was a very famous line which was used by the Chinese with relationship to Indian Ocean region. They said once, and that was a very infamous statement, said that this is Indian Ocean, this is not India's ocean. So now obviously it is an informal methodology, but that's what they've done. What are they trying to do? They are trying to surround India by having naval bases. So they have naval bases here. They have collaboration with friendly countries, be that Myanmar, right? Be that Pakistan. You must have heard of a port called as Gwadar Port, right? They've taken control of Hambantota and so on and so forth. Now, this is a very simple way in which they are trying to encircle India. Now, is it India? Yes, it is certainly India. India is at their target because India has a strong naval power over here. India's zone of influence extends in Indian Ocean region. So this is a way of challenging India's influence in the ocean. Now, this is referred to as in the foreign policy parlance as string of pearls strategy. As I said, this is unofficial. So if you call up Chinese, they are not going to accept that this is a strategy. Now, Maldives. Now, don't worry about and certainly don't have sleepless nights because India is also doing something about it. So you have Gwadar here. India is also mirroring with the Chabahar port over here. They are collaborating in Myanmar, etc. We are also collaborating with Singapore. We are also collaborating with Mauritius, Seychelles Islands, and so on and so forth. So it is not the case. In fact, unofficially, sometimes this is also called as the string of flower technique. So this is also unofficial. So we might be countering string of pearls of China with what is called as string of flowers. So वो लोग string of pearls कर रहे हैं, हम लोग string of flowers कर रहे हैं. Right. This is just countering. Military technique में this is called as mirroring. This is called as mirroring. एक तुम खड़ा करो, एक तुम वो चेस में एक प्यादा तुम बढ़ाओ, हम भी बढ़ाएंगे, फिर तुम एक बढ़ाओ, फिर हम एक बढ़ाएंगे. वी आर ट्राइंग टू काउंटर. तो हमारे पास भी लिस्निंग पोस्ट होंगे. वी विल आल्सो हैव रडार्स, वी विल आल्सो हैव नेवल बेसेस, वी विल आल्सो हैव पोर्ट सेटलमेंट्स, वी विल आल्सो हैव एग्रीमेंट्स एंड सो ऑन सो forth. We'll try and counter. That's how military techniques and that is how strategic influences are always focused. Cool enough. Let's go to the next part. Now, in that context, Maldives certainly starts playing a role on this part. If if Maldives remains under our influence, or if at all, even if it does not remain under our influence, at least we were hoping that it will remain neutral. But China does not want it to remain neutral. China wants it to become red. Since China wants it to come under the influence of the Chinese. And for that, they have been doing it for the longest time. Let's not mix it up. Okay. So we were not trying to understand. So if you look at the previous governments, Yamin also, he was pro-China, right? So domestic policies is still around. So if you can watch this word, see, it will be interesting to see the impact of Maldivian domestic politics on geostrategic forces revolving around the Chinese string of pearls strategy at play in the Indian Ocean region. तो मैंने तुम्हें बातों बातों में सब कुछ बता दिया. राइट. सो अगेन अब तुम्हें समझ में आएगा कि वो पूछ क्या रहे हैं. Why are we reading these articles? Why is this suddenly of importance to us? Because this is again a manifestation that Chinese string of pearl strategy is working, or at least it is at play. You have to be cognizant of that. You just cannot shut your eyes to this part. So yes, China has been a part of it, and it has been happening for the longest time. So China Maldives relationships were enriched as Chinese opened an embassy in Malé in 2011. Okay. Despite the fact, also Maldives has been playing both sides of the game, because Maldives was also cognizant of the fact that India is not going to be very happy with expanding Chinese influence. So Nasheed, in fact, in 2011 at the CHOGM, the Commonwealth Head of Meetings in Perth, had actually said that for us, India is first. That was the word that he used. Our foreign policy is India first. Now, please understand, is it merely rhetoric, or are they actually going to do about it? Is it merely rhetoric, as in it's only wordplay, or are they going to do anything about it? We for some time actually ignored that part because the government was in our support. So we were saying it's fine, fair enough. But then suddenly the government has changed. So President Muzu, okay, now important point here is suddenly he takes a very major call and he says, no, right? You might be having a problem with China, but we have no problem with China. And in fact, he actually met his Chinese counterparts, requesting them for a sudden help in increase in number of tourists. This is very funny at the same time, because at the same time we were having the view that there is something called India first on the foreign policy of Maldives, and that has come kind of as a shock to us. So there are two observations to this. One observation is that this is something that was happening, so you need not get shocked about it, right? Because China was always expanding its arms in the Indian Ocean region. Maldives was kind of tilting towards China for the longest time, despite the fact that they were using the word India first as foreign policy. And suddenly, with the change of the government, okay, this was expected. So, despite the fact that it has happened, just take it with a pinch of salt and it's okay. Just roll with the punches and it's fine. The second thought process is that the problem is happening in our neighborhood, and Indian Ocean region is that region. In fact, the entire Indo-Pacific region is right in the spotlight because of Quad and China, everything. Everybody is looking here. So some of the political pundits, some of the foreign policy experts are calling out that this is kind of worrisome. We should be worried about this part. I'm sure our government is going to do a better look at that rather than you going into the research topic of this. So long and short of the story is this. This is about string of pearls. नाउ इसी से रिलेटेड एक बहुत ही अच्छा टॉपिक है एंड दैट टॉपिक इज बिफोर आई एक्सप्लेन दैट टॉपिक टू यू ओके यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस पार्ट सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल मैं तुम्हारे साथ एक न्यूज रीड करूंगा एंड आई एम रीडिंग दिस न्यूज कमिंग फ्रॉम हियर ओके सो दिस इज अनदर आर्टिकल इट सेज Mohammad Moizzu to China. Mr. Moizzu has taken a significant pro-China stand compared to his predecessor. His election campaign in 2023 also contained anti-India rhetoric. He promised to remove Indian troops from the Maldives and balance trade relations, which he claimed were heavily tilted in India's favor. During his recent visit to China's Fujian province, Mr. Moizzu stated that Maldives' number one market before COVID-19 was China and appealed to China to intensify its efforts to regain that position. China and Maldives also elevated the bilateral ties to a comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership. Chinese president said China respects and supports the Maldives in exploring a new development path suited to national control. Now, this is how you have to understand this part. तो अगर तुम ये न्यूज़ देखोगे ना तो तुम्हें कुछ याद आ जाएगा कि द मोमेंट इस तरह की बातें हुई थी एंड देन देयर वाज अ ऑफिशियल ऑफ Maldives also who had used foul words, actually not very decent words, undiplomatic words against our honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi. So suddenly what happened? The entire social media went into a frenzy. Okay. We started calling out names to Maldives and there was so many aggressive stands. Okay, then so many other talks, ban kar do, yahan travel nahi karna, and so on and so forth. In other words, this was a very aggressive stand, right? Now there is a problem. When the people are turning in aggressive stand, what is the government supposed to do? This is a very important question. Agar the domestic demand is that this is something that Maldives, you should take it very strongly against Maldives and there should be an aggressive stand and trade ban and trade ban and so on and so forth. What is the government supposed to do? Is the government supposed to respond in kind and do the same as what Maldives does, or should government take a balanced opinion? Should the foreign policy be affected by should the foreign policy be affected by domestic demand, which is the popular demand, or should foreign policy be completely unaffected by what the people of the country want? This takes us to an opinion, or rather, a contrasting stand, which is usually taken up by China. So, if you look at China, you have to understand a kind of story in terms of historical perspective. So, when China and India became independent in whatever way, they say it's the Cultural Revolution or whatever, both of them, two giant countries, both of them with massive problems, massive population, huge socio-economic problems, had come out and they wanted to face. They were together. They had not same but similar threats with relationship to how are they going to develop, how are they going to look after the population, and so on and so forth. China, however, in the 1970s opened up its economy. Please understand. India also opened this economy, but we opened our economy in 1991, 92. All right. So 1917, 70s, China opened up its economy, and China took up several steps of market reforms, non-bureaucratization, free markets, and so on and so forth. So whatever we did in 1990s, they had started a way earlier. Now China gradually became very, very powerful with terms of money. And this was the time of Deng Xiaoping. So Deng Xiaoping says, all right, fine, fair enough. All right, we are a communist country, but we will open up our markets. And they started making huge inroads into economic development. Deng Xiaoping, all right, Deng Xiaoping, however, told them to do one thing, and that was Tom Tao Guang Yang Hui. What was the word? Tao Guang Yang Hui. This was their secret. What was this? ये तो हमारी मम्मी भी कहती है, हमारी दादियां भी कहती है। क्या बोलते हैं? बेटा नई नई गाड़ी लिए, अभी से मत कुछ बोलना, नजर लग जाएगी। वेरी सिमिलर टू दैट नजर लग जाओ फंडा। This is Tao Guang Yang Hui. What is Tao Guang Yang Hui? Tao Guang Yang Hui says, bide your time. Don't start shouting. Just because you started earning money does not mean that you start shouting, making loud noises. Don't make any noise here. Be quiet. Bide your time. So 1970s, they start making money. By 1970s, they start making money. They start having economic development by leaps and bounds. They start developing military infrastructure and whatnot, technology. By the time 2008 comes, the Tao Guang Yang Hui is far more than नजर लगना. अब कितनी नजर लगाओगे? हाँ सर, लगने लायक हम बहुत बड़े हो गए अभी. So 2008, Xi Jinping comes into the picture, and Xi Jinping says, enough. बहुत हो गया Tao Guang Yang Hui. Okay, I don't care about any nazar wazar. Okay, let's start shouting. Let us claim our place in the world. So Tao Guang Yang Hui goes to the back burner, and something else come into the picture, and that picture is called as wolf warrior. So the diplomacy converts itself into what is called as wolf warrior diplomacy. Wolf warrior diplomacy is an aggressive form of diplomacy. In fact, I would believe that it is not diplomacy, it is something else, but it is called as wolf warrior. So this was wolf warrior diplomacy. So suddenly the Chinese diplomats, they start using very dangerous language, practically on the verge of threats to international diplomacy. First of all, understand, in diplomacy there is no space for threats. There is no space for sharp words. Even if you have to criticize, you have to criticize in a very convoluted way, in a very soft way, in a very parliamentary diplomatic language. China, however, starts using, especially after COVID-19, right? When China was blamed that China is the one which is responsible for this COVID virus and whatnot. China started using some very strange words. If you notice over here, the word is wolf warrior diplomacy. So look at the value of editorials. But तुम खुद पढ़ोगे तो पता नहीं कैसे पढ़ोगे. But China starts defending itself very strongly. In fact, they resort to words like which is very similar to authoritarianism. Now, this is a very funny thing. They start saying, you don't interfere in our matters, right? You will have to face repercussions. Remember that China is a very strong country. We are not going to be cowed down, and so on and so forth. But the world is now looking at China. कि यार ये कैसे words use कर रहे हैं यार? Okay. But the Chinese can do it because China says this is how we are internally. Please understand, हम लोग internally भी authoritarian है, right? हमारे यहाँ पे कोई आवाज करता है, वो आवाज नहीं करने दी जाती. तो हम एक्सटर्नली भी अथॉरिटेरियन रह सकते हैं. यू अंडरस्टैंडिंग? सो यू कैन ऑलवेज मैच द टू. However, can India do it? No. Why? At least some people would believe no. Because within India, we are a popular government. We are a democratic government. We are a liberal government. We give enough space for our people. Can we change this? just because today our people want an aggressive stand. Today our people have become wolf warriors. Okay, so everybody is sounding like a wolf, right? On Twitter. Can our government say, since now our people are now turning wolfy in nature, if at all there is a word called wolfy? Okay. Imagine, wolfy sounds cute actually. I don't think it's that cute. So it is like, can the, just because our people have suddenly become aggressive on Twitter, so our foreign policy should also become very, very aggressive, and we should start calling out names to Maldives. This is a very important question. This is the question. This is what you have to think about here. If we read over here, while that became popular at home in China, the world saw an admission of guilt in China's behavior. However, China, this was only a reflection of its perception that the world was denying the country its rightful place in international order. Through wolf warrior policy, China informed the world how its political system was better at handling the pandemic. Wolf warrior diplomats often defend China's interests against what they perceived as its hostility from abroad. Thereby, they resort to rhetoric of authoritarianism as being more efficient than other systems. The stand of social media warriors was not too different from this. Yes. So, this is the question. And if I read on this, मैं तुम्हें कितने ऐसे दिखा सकता हूँ. आई कैन शो यू 100 डिफरेंट एग्जाम्पल्स ऑफ दिस. एवरी टाइम चाइना से तुम कुछ पूछो कि चाइना तुमने रॉन्ग क्यों किया, okay? तो चाइना के हर लाइन में तुम्हें ये वर्ड दिखाई देगा, और वो वर्ड दिखाई देगा नेशनल कंडीशंस. ये देखो, ये था फॉलोइंग अ चाइनीज पाथ ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स डेवलपमेंट एंड कंट्रीब्यूटिंग चाइना स्ट्रेंथ टू ग्लोबल ह्यूमन राइट्स गवर्नेंस. तो ये फॉरेन मिनिस्टर ऑफ पीपल्स रिपब्लिक ऑफ चाइना ने बोला यूनाइटेड नेशन ह्यूमन राइट्स काउंसिल में. बोलेगा जी हमने ऐसा किया, ऐसा किया, ऐसा किया, ऐसा किया, ऐसा किया, ऐसा किया, ये गलत किया, ये तुम्हें लगता है गलत किया. हमें नहीं लगता, क्योंकि हम जो कर रहे हैं हमारे नेशनल कंडीशंस के अकॉर्डिंग है. वाह जी. फिर चाइना एफएम मेक्स रिमार्क्स ऑन यूएसएस वायलेशन ऑफ चाइना सॉवरेनिटी. वो ये बात बोलेगा यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स को ये नहीं करना चाहिए, ये नहीं करना चाहिए, ये नहीं करना चाहिए. अगर तुमने किया तो हम ये करेंगे जो तुम्हें अच्छा ना भी लगे, बट हम करेंगे बिकॉज इट इज फॉलोइंग नेशनल कंडीशन. ये सही वर्ड्स है. तुम्हें हर जगह पे नेशनल कंडीशंस वर्ड हो जाएगा. ये प्रैक्टिकली इन्वर्टेड कॉमा हो गया. ओके, ये नेशनल कंडीशन जी, हमारे नेशनल कंडीशन बोलते हैं, सामने वाले को मार दो, मार दिया. ऑलराइट. तो दे आर जस्टिफाइंग कि जस्ट बिकॉज हमारा ऑथोरिटेरियन वे ऑफ लाइफ इज वेरी डिसेंट वे, हमारा बड़ा सक्सेसफुल मॉडल है, हम जो मर्जी करते रहेंगे. तो इनकी वुल्फ वॉरियर डिप्लोमेसी हैज गॉन वेरी डिफरेंट. नाउ द प्रॉब्लम हियर इज, हमको इसको प्रैक्टिकली लेना पड़ेगा. इनमें से कोई भी आर्टिकल मेरा नहीं है, ठीक है. ये सब मैंने एडिटोरियल में से लिया है, जो मैंने अभी अभी तुम्हें दिखाया, और उसके काम की चीजें तुम्हारे साथ शेयर कर रहा हूँ. It says India's relationship with Maldives was built over a time. It is a comprehensive one. जहां तक हमको लगता है कि Maldives needs India, it is true that India needs the Maldives equally. अब ये हो गया फॉरेन पॉलिसी को समझदारी से लेना, इंस्टेड ऑफ द ट्विटर आर्टी के डिमांड, सोशल मीडिया डिमांड, ये कर दो, वो कर दो. तो एक बैलेंस कंट्री को दोनों चीजों को साथ में लेना पड़ता है. इट इज गोइंग, इफ यू टॉर्न बिटवीन, if you're torn between the popular demand and what is actually sane foreign policy, you are going to have trouble. So Maldives is India's key maritime neighbor. We have to believe on this rather than taking a stand which is completely anti-Maldives. It has also consistently taken pro-India positions in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. तो फॉरेन पॉलिसी में हमेशा ये बात बोलता है दैट यू व्हेनेवर यू आर नेगोशिएटिंग फॉरेन पॉलिसी में, यू डिवाइडेड इनटू टू पार्ट्स. One is what are called doable methods, one is what is called non-doable paths. So there is something called as, ये तो इशू सेटल ही नहीं हो रहा, इसको छोड़ दो. Okay, let's get ahead with what is doable, right? छोटा सा बात है, कॉमन ग्राउंड. मोदी जी एक वर्ड यूज करते हैं, शेयर्ड इंटरेस्ट. तो शेयर्ड इंटरेस्ट है, कहीं ना कहीं तो हमारे शेयर्ड इंटरेस्ट होंगे ना, हर जगह थोड़ा ना हमारा क्लैश होगा. तो उस शेयर्ड इंटरेस्ट को पकड़ो. तो द पॉइंट है इज कि हम लोगों को ये सिंपल सी पॉइंट है. ओके, आज हमारे पास बहुत सारे कठिन शब्द आ रहे. फॉरेन पॉलिसी कितना चैलेंजिंग हो गया, वो इसी बात से समझ में आ रहा है कि अगर रशिया इन्वेजन ऑफ यूक्रेन में इंडिया की फॉरेन पॉलिसी क्या होगी. कैन यू बिलीव इट? रशिया मेरा दोस्त है, यस. यूक्रेन भी मेरा दोस्त ही था. यूक्रेन कौन सा मेरा दुश्मन था? बिल्कुल. रशिया मेरा दोस्त है, यूक्रेन भी मेरा दोस्त है, यूएसए भी मेरा दोस्त है, वेरी गुड. लेकिन यूएसए रशिया का एंटी है, यस. रशिया आज यूक्रेन का एंटी है, यस. मुझे यूएसए से भी काम पड़ता है, यस. मुझे यूक्रेन से भी काम पड़ता है, यस. मुझे रशिया से भी काम पड़ता है, यस. मैं क्या करूं? क्या मैं रशिया के अगेंस्ट बोलूं? क्या मेरा रशिया के अगेंस्ट बोलना यूक्रेन के फेवर में बोलना है? क्या मैं यूक्रेन के अगेंस्ट बोलूं? नहीं. क्या मैं यूक्रेन के अगेंस्ट नहीं बोल रहा हूं तो इसका मतलब है मैं रशिया के या मैं रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर के अगेंस्ट नहीं बोल रहा, तो मैं क्या रशिया को सपोर्ट कर रहा हूँ कि वॉर करना? फॉरेन पॉलिसी में दिस कैन बिकम वेरी डेंजरस क्वेश्चंस, राइट? तो 1+1 in foreign policy is not necessarily 2. It can be anything that you want it to be. 1+1 can be anything. तो हमको ऑयल भी लेना था, हमने रशिया से ऑयल भी लेना, हमें वेपन्स भी लेने हैं, हमें वेपन्स रशिया लेना, हमारा पुराना दोस्त भी है, ये भी हमारा रशिया से दोस्ती है। यूएसए हमारा ब्रांड न्यू फ्रेंड बना है, ये भी हमारी सच्चाई है। हम वॉर के अगेंस्ट है, ये भी हमारी सच्चाई है, बिकॉज आर्टिकल 51 में हम लोग इंटरनेशनल पीस एंड सिक्योरिटी की बात करते हैं। वी आर फर्म बिलीवर्स ऑफ यूनाइटेड नेशन चार्टर, वी आर फर्म बिलीवर्स ऑफ वसुधैव कुटुंबकम। हम तो हमेशा पीसफुल को एग्जिस्टेंस की बात करते हैं। हम तो पंचशील के जन्मदाता है। हमने तो गांधीयन नॉन वायलेंस का, हम वी आर सो प्राउड ऑफ इट। तो इसको कैसे करेंगे? सो दिस आर वेरी वेरी डिफिकल्ट थिंग। हम लोग ऑयल खरीद रहे हैं, यूरोप को प्रॉब्लम होती है, जबकि यूरोप खुद खरीद रहा होता है। इट इज़ नॉट एन ईजी आंसर ओवर दिस। इसलिए कम से कम मॉलडीव्स के इशू में तो तुम लोगों ने नहीं इतना ज़्यादा वुल्फ वॉरियर मेथोडोलॉजी करना चाहिए। इवन इन इसराइल हमास, हम लोग क्या करने वाले? इसराइल हमारा बेस्ट फ्रेंड है, वी नो दैट। इसराइल इज अमंग्स आवर डियरेस्ट फ्रेंड्स। बट डू वी वांट वॉर? नो, वी डोंट वांट वॉर। So this is a very important part. So important is, in fact, as history suggests, there is always a competition between desire to shape global norms and to be popular. It is impossible to do both at the same time. India has to make those hard choices and it must make them now. Populist rhetoric at home is not going to win India friends abroad, especially in the neighborhood where smaller countries hedge their bets between India and another power, which has been China in most cases. China है ना, चाइना अपने आप को पहले से ही बोल के रखता है, हम तो अथॉरिटेरियन है। तो हम लोग एक्सेप्ट करते हैं। जो बदमाश लोग होते हैं ना, कि उनको मॉरल ग्राउंड्स की चिंता नहीं करनी पड़ती। तो चाइना ने तो पहले बोल दिया हम तो वुल्फ वॉरियर, हम तो कोई मॉरल ग्राउंड्स की जरूरत ही नहीं। इंडिया ऑन द अदर हैंड इज द फ्लैग बेयर ऑफ इट, इंटरनेशनल लॉज, इंटरनेशनल नॉर्म्स, इंटरनेशनल पीस। So we have to be very very careful. तो ये वुल्फ वॉरियर पॉलिसी हैज टू बी वेरी वेरी वरीड अबाउट। ओके, तो जो उस तरह से ट्विटर पे सोशल मीडिया पे स्टॉर्म आया था, we have to balance the both of them. An aspiring great power should be able to project harmony between its own national interests and the interests of everyone else, most importantly its neighbors. तो ये होता है चैलेंज, और ये तुम्हें क्वेश्चंस आते हैं कि हम लोगों को बैलेंस करना पड़ेगा। कहाँ पर हमारी डोमेस्टिक डिमांड है, हमारे ट्विटर पे क्या बोला जा रहा है, न्यूज़पेपर में क्या बोला जा रहा है, लोकल न्यूज़ में क्या आ रहा है, और इंटरनेशनली हमको उसका रिस्पॉन्स कैसे देना है। These are two entirely different things and it's very very difficult to balance the two of them. लेकिन in most of them, most cases, both of them cannot be carried out together. It's a very very difficult task. Actually, ये था इसका टॉपिक। तो this is the entire situation, okay? And I hope you have understood and you have got this point. The plan here is that you will have an opportunity to study दो एडिटोरियल्स किए, हमें आधा आधा घंटा लगा, लेकिन वी वर एबल टू ऑल ऑफ दीज टॉपिक्स टुगेदर। दिस इज हाउ यू टेक एडवांटेज ऑफ एवरीथिंग। मुझे उम्मीद है कि मैंने जो मेहनत की है या फिर जो मैं तुम्हारे लिए एफर्ट डाल रहा हूँ उसका तुम्हें फायदा होगा। एंड इफ यू आर रियली फाइंडिंग इट गुड बेनिफिशियल, प्लीज ड्रॉप इन अ कमेंट। अदरवाइज ये एक्सपेरिमेंट यहीं शुरू होते ही खत्म हो जाएगा। So hopefully you've enjoyed this. Remember, we have a Republic Day offer extended, 150% off and 6 months free extension till 31st January. Please don't forget to use my code SIDLIVE, SIDLIVE, to take advantage. The words of an academy. Let's crack it. Until next time, God bless. Thank you and Jai Hind.